Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is an Iran conflict, US, Israel, Iran breaking news update concerning a ceasefire that was, scare quotes, agreed upon. Then it was broken almost immediately and Trump has gone off on one. And this is quite extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. So let's go to what we know, the last thing we know, which is Trump saying this, before we then rewind to see what has been said today and this morning UK time.
Israel says that Iran violated the peace agreement and the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Unbelievable. So this is the Trump presidency. Absolutely incredible. And that will be forever clipped. That will be forever clipped. Wow.
Be about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Wow. Okay. So I don't know if he's going to get his Nobel Peace Prize. Okay. Where do we go from there? Apparently, Ed Crescenstein was saying when he was writing this Truth Social post, and by the way, this does appear to be diplomacy by Truth Social. Donald Trump said, Israel is not going to attack Iran. All planes will turn around and head home while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. Nobody will be hurt. The ceasefire is in effect. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. And Israel literally dropped bombs on Iran as he was kind of typing that message. So let's rewind. And by the way, unfortunately, we're going to just have to do this by Truth Social to get an idea of what the chronology of events was. So 18 hours ago, we had this. So this is where we're going to start the narrative. Donald J. Trump. So this is history according to Donald J. Trump. The sites that we hit in Iran were totally destroyed and everyone knows it. So there'd been all this reporting, and I did some reporting of this yesterday from open source and from mainstream media talking about how it was unlikely that he obliterated, or the American Air Force obliterated the nuclear sites in the way that he was claiming. So he comes out in response to the idea that they had moved enriched uranium and that the evidence wasn't in of complete destruction of these sites, right? And said the sites that we hit in Iran were totally destroyed and everyone knows it. Only the fake news would say anything different in order to try and demean as much as possible. And even they say they were pretty well destroyed. Working especially hard on this falsehood is Alison Cooper of Fake News CNN. Dumb Brian L. Roberts, chairman of Concast, Johnny Carl of ABC Fake News, and always the losers of, again, Concast's NBC Fake News. If it never ends with the sleazebags in the media, and that's why their ratings are at all caps, all-time low, zero credibility. Like, this is the remonstration of a child. It's just absolutely incredible. People saying, he's so clueless. I mean, this is what it would sound like. And we haven't read this one yet. We're going to read this. But this applies to almost everything he says in the chronology I'm giving you. I mean, this is what it would sound like if you asked a fourth grader to imagine what a ceasefire would be like. And yet your entire political class is committed to never mentioning that the man is an imbecile. Just incredible rhetoric. Did you ever think you would live in a time when the president, this is in response to the one I just read you, did you ever think you would live in a time when the president of the United States talked like this? This is what he is talking like. This is your serious diplomat dropping the F-bombs on TV. Iran has officially responded to our obliteration of their nuclear facilities with a very weak response. Now, the problem here is that he is an international diplomat trying to de-escalate what's going on. And what it appeared that happened last night was Iran sent the same number of missiles at the US Qatari airbase as the Americans dropped MOP, these massive ordnance penetrators, as a show to their own population. Really it was a symbolic gesture, kind of prearranged strike on the American base that allows Iran to save face, right? So what you do as a sensible response to that saving of face symbolic gesture is you kind of draw a line in the sand. You don't go, whoa, that was really weak, because then they were going to want to do more. This is just insanely bad diplomacy. So he says, Iran has officially responded with a very weak response, which we expected, and have very effectively countered. There have been 14 missiles fired, 13 were knocked down, and 1 was set free because it was headed in a non-threatening direction. I'm pleased to report that no Americans were harmed and hardly any damage was done. Most importantly, they've gotten it all out of their system, and they will hopefully there will be no further hate. I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice. So now we understand that the Iranians gave them early notice. This was clearly symbolic, right? They gave the Americans early notice. We're going to hit you with 14 missiles just to let you know. We're going to send them to this place and you can do with them what you will. Which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured. The problem is, like, if you're doing a symbolic gesture, if the other side clearly indicates that there was discussion amongst you beforehand, then it doesn't become a symbolic show. It becomes a sham, and an open sham. So Trump is communicating to the Iranian people that the missile attack was a sham. So then there's no point in doing it. So then that's going to annoy the Iranians. This is just such poor diplomacy. I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice, which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured. Perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace and harmony in the region. I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same. Thank you for your attention in this matter, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, etc., etc. He then went on to say, I thank the highly respected Emir of Qatar for all that he has done in seeking peace in the region. Regarding the attack today at the American base in Qatar, I'm pleased to report that in addition to no Americans being killed or wounded, very importantly, there have also been no Qataris killed or wounded. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So I think someone had probably contacted him to say, I think you need to thank the Qataris here because that base was in Qatar and missiles were sent at the nation of Qatar. You can see that as a bellicose move from Iran on behalf, and the Qataris took that on behalf of the United States. So you need to say something. So I think he's come out and said this. Then he later says, all caps, congratulations world, it's time for peace. So he spends half the time congratulating himself and the rest of the time just randomly congratulating the world. His next one is congratulations to everyone. All caps. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended, all caps. Officially, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire, and upon the 24th hour, an official end to the 12-day war, so he's now admitting it is a war, will be saluted, although I think he's saying a war between Israel and Iran, will be saluted by the world during each ceasefire. The other side will remain peaceful and respectful, all caps, on the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will. I would like to congratulate both countries, Israel and Iran, on having the stamina, courage and intelligence to end what should be called the 12-day war. This is a war that could have gone on for years and destroyed the entire Middle East, but it didn't and never will. God bless Israel, God bless Iran, God bless the Middle East, God bless the United States of America, and God bless the world, all caps. It's the ranting of a madman here, trying to force these two to peace. And of course, the reason why he's reacted so embarrassingly there is because he was stating with utmost confidence that both sides would agree to this peace and it's the end of the world, full stop. And then he retruths himself, but in meme style, him standing in front of American flags, congratulations world, it's time for peace, highlighted. Then peace through strength. By the way, it's Caroline Leavitt, its press secretary, is saying that he's coined this phrase. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Ronald Reagan has something to say about that. And indeed, the Emperor Hadrian, I believe, first coined it in ancient Roman empirical times. But don't worry about that, my man. Peace and harmony there. Another picture of himself being all strong and whatnot. This is just, as someone has delightfully communicated with this picture. This is Defmon, who was previously, I think, a pretty strong supporter, certainly Republicans, pretty Trumpian. He's now massively anti-Trump, just like David D as well. These sources that are coming out military sort of quasi-military sources coming out against Trump. They're no fans of Democrats, but they're seeing Trump for what he is. And here, posting this picture of Trump giving himself a medal. And then Defmon saying Truth Social right now. And it is. He's just giving himself medals all day long on Truth Social. It's just incredible. He then reposts Mike Huckabee saying it's 3 a.m. in Israel and awakened by phone instead of ballistic missiles as Donald Trump gives the world great news of ceasefire soon to be in place. 12 days felt like 12 months. POTUS, so President of the United States, didn't just pray for the peace in Jerusalem, he delivered it. So the idea here is there's all this bombastic rhetoric to say how wonderful Donald Trump is because he's delivered a ceasefire, even though it hadn't even been enacted yet. And then Donald Trump saying, thanks to all these amazing Fox News people, Laura Ingraham for great interviews, blah, blah, blah. B-2 bombers coming back, pictures of bombers. Then he's like congratulating himself on like the big beautiful bill and stuff. Fight, fight, fight. Pictures of him being dramatic and strong. Then saying for the first time ever, a majority of Americans believe the United States is on the right track, but he doesn't provide any sourcing for that. It's just a mere assertion. We then have him saying that Trump's approval soars, 56% approval rating. That's from Rasmussen. His source is almost cut off there, but actually, if you click on it, Rasmussen. So that's an utterly pro Republican source. And then we come on to more talk. So this is 10 hours ago. Israel and Iran came to me almost simultaneously and said, peace. I knew the time was now. The world and the Middle East are the real winners. Both nations will see tremendous love, peace and prosperity in their futures. They have so much to gain and yet so much to lose if they stray from the right road of righteousness and truth. All caps. The future of Israel and Iran is unlimited and filled with great promise. God bless you both. So you can see he's setting himself up for a big fall, because if it doesn't happen, then oh dear. Here we have Trump was right about everything, a meme that he's created of him kissing the flag. Trump was right about everything. This is just him giving himself medal after medal, punching the sky and an oil painting representation of his strength there. Now, we couldn't have made today's deal without the talent and courage of our great B-2 pilots and all of those associated with that operation. In a certain and very ironic way, that perfect hit late in the evening brought everyone together and a deal was made. Again, more talk about the deal. Then all caps, the ceasefire is now in effect 7 hours ago. Please do not violate it. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. And then he has a go at the Fed chair. And then 2 hours ago, he writes this. All caps, Israel, do not drop those bombs. If you do, it is a major violation. Bring your pilots home now. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Israel is not going to attack Iran. All planes will turn around and head home while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. Nobody will be hurt. The ceasefire is in effect. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Donald J. Trump. And then the latest one. Iran will never rebuild their nuclear facilities. All caps. Nothing else added since then, but we have heard him F and Jeff here, and now you understand the context.
I'm not happy with Iran either, but I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
And I'm trying to get my head around this diversion from Benjamin Netanyahu. And speculation here, if Trump was your regular neocon conservative, he would be beholden more to Netanyahu. Now, while Trump has been beholden to Netanyahu, and he's aligned himself with that, he will be very cognizant of the huge lobbying that the Israelis do in the capital, in Congress. And that's why there's a lot of alignment. But there's no ideology for Trump. So if you've listened to him before rail about how I've done more for Israel, I've done more for Jews than anyone else, they voted for me for this, blah, 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 blah. For him, it's so transactional. It's like, I do nice things for you, so you get me into power. And so I look good. And it's all about looking good. And if Israel makes him look bad, he will drop Israel. Like, this is about Trump. Everything's about Trump. It's not about the geopolitics. It's not about the United States of America. It's not about what's best for the United States and the people of the US. It is about what is best for Trump. It always has been, and it always will be. He is the quintessential narcissistic president, summarized by that. That sums it all up. And as Defmon goes on to say, and we just saw this, to back up, Trump was always right about everything, and pictures of himself, etc., etc. There is this sense that the line has been crossed, but it's not a geopolitical strategic line. It's like, I was really confident about saying something. I said it over and over on Truth Social, and now you've made me look like a fool because it didn't come to pass, because you guys have started throwing missiles at each other and bombing each other. Now you made me look like an idiot. I hate you for that. And he was trying to do diplomacy, I think, through just railroading this supposed ceasefire into reality. I doubt there was all that much diplomacy going on. It's like, yeah, we'll force a ceasefire. I'm going to say it's a ceasefire, therefore it's a ceasefire. Oh, they haven't agreed. Oh well, even though I said that they've agreed, but had they really agreed? What was actually going on under the bonnet here? So it's just railing against the media for deeming to try and fact check him and doing critical reporting, railing against Israel because and Iran, but Israel particularly here for making him look like a fool, and just incredible rhetoric at all times from Trump. Again, like someone said, it's like a fourth grader's written this stuff, really. I'm surprised he didn't call it the Trump ceasefire. He must not be very confident it will hold up, said Defmon before it fell apart, and it fell apart pretty damned quickly. H.I. Sutton sums it all up. So Trump has declared a ceasefire, and both Iran and Israel seem to have agreed, but also both Iran and Israel are continuing to strike each other. A paradox, says the analyst, a paradox wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in incredulity, and someone has dipped in BS. So yeah, that's pretty much where we are at. Iran reportedly launches missiles at Israel hours after Trump announced a ceasefire. Quote, a short while ago, sirens sounded in northern Israel following the identification of missiles launched from Iran toward the state of Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces said in a statement. And then the Defense Minister Israel Katz said, in response to Iran's violation of the ceasefire, I've instructed the IDF to carry out powerful strikes against regime targets in the heart of Tehran. So, trying to hit them right in their capital, essentially. Shashank Joshi was saying earlier, quoting from the New York Times, Israel has not yet confirmed the ceasefire, and within 3 hours of Mr. Trump's announcement, there were fresh attacks from Israel against Iran, raising questions about whether all parties had agreed to it. And I wonder if some truth will eventually emerge that suggests that maybe this was indeed railroaded by Trump himself. Diplomacy by assertion. To continue, the official did not say what conditions Iran may have agreed to, including whether it answered questions about the whereabouts of the stockpile of enriched uranium. Phillips O'Brien, who is as you probably know, I've been quoting him for the last couple of years. He is a historian of war. He says, so the US campaign against Iran seems to have gone like this. 1, Trump does not want to get involved. 2, he is told that Israel is having lots of success. 3, he becomes desperate to join so he can be seen to kick ass. 4, he bombs Iran one night. 5, the results of the bombing are not clear. 6, Trump is desperate to declare victory and get out of the war, so regardless, declared a ceasefire. And of course, 7 is, and both sides broke the ceasefire almost immediately. Phillips O'Brien just concludes the US is not a serious country, and he says that as an American citizen. You know, the US is just not a serious country. This isn't serious diplomacy. So as Mick Ryan says, well, that was quick. Clash Report reports that in response to Iran's violation of the ceasefire, I've instructed the IDF to carry out powerful strikes. It's like, yeah, that was quick. Ceasefire came and then it went. Now, let's just talk about a couple of other things to do with the war in Iran to just give us greater context. This is JD Vance on Fox News.
You said totally obliterated. The president has said totally obliterated the Iran nuclear program.
Yeah.
Do you know for sure where all the highly enriched uranium is?
Well, Brett, I think that's actually...
Now, before he answers, just take note of how he answers this. He said, you said obliterated. President said obliterated. You know, what's the evidence of this? I think the question should be, I think I'm going to reframe this to answer in a completely different way, in a way that I want to, that allows me to say what I want to say. So I'm not going to answer what you've asked for. What you've asked.
Well, Brett, I think that's actually not the question before us. The question before us is,
He
can
asked
Iran
the question.
enrich the uranium to a weapons-grade level, and can they convert that fuel to a nuclear weapon? And we know, based on the success of our mission, of course, the leadership of the president, but the incredible skill of our military, that the 2 mission objectives are completely successful. We know that they cannot build a nuclear weapon. Now, you asked about the highly enriched uranium.
Yeah, like 900 pounds of it.
But what we know, Brett, is that uranium is something that exists in very large supply. Our goal was to bury the uranium, and I do think the uranium is buried, but our goal was to eliminate the enrichment and eliminate their ability to convert that enriched fuel into a nuclear weapon. I think this is an important point, Brett, because so many of the folks who have focused on the highly enriched uranium,
60%.
The main focus, Brett, has been to destroy their enrichment capacity, because we don't want that 60% uranium to become 90% uranium. That's the real concern.
And of course, Fox News isn't going to kick back that much, are they? They're not going to push that back that much because, hey, this is Vice President and the President, and we don't want to be seen as too critical. But, you know, I've asked you, do you know where it is? That's not the right question. We want to be talking about this. No, that's the exact question. That was the question. You don't get to dictate what the questions are. The journalist does that, but apparently not so. And then we have Jesse Waters, who is just forever the imbecile on Fox News, saying this.
And China's watching. The cartels are on notice now, and even Denmark probably won't put up much of a fight over Greenland. And even
hilarious. So just to give you the context here, this is him fawning over the wonderful American strikes on Iran and saying Denmark are going to be watching, not wanting to put up a fight over Greenland. He's literally using the strikes on Iran as a deterrence against defense of a NATO country or a NATO territory by a European NATO ally as the US invades it. It's effectively what he's saying. You've seen what we can do in Iran. Denmark, you need to sit and not do anything as we invade Greenland. Thank you very much. This is what Jesse Waters is saying. This is Fox News' narrative.
And China's watching. The cartels are on notice now, and even Denmark probably won't put up much of a fight over Greenland. And even in the trade negotiations, this gives the president a little bit more leverage, because it's not like we're going to drop bunker busters on Germany. But when you are willing to go to this extreme for something you believe in, the people that are at the negotiating table are going to take notice. I'm sure Lutnick is going to exploit this. And China's
absolutely incredible. Right. So then we have Caroline Levitt here, who says peace through strength is Trump's invention.
And nobody knows what it means to accomplish peace through strength better than President Trump. He is the one who came up with that motto and that foreign policy doctrine, and he successfully implemented it in his first term. And this is one of many steps he is taking to successfully implement peace in his second term. And no,
it's a motto that he came up with. Actually, says this source, it was the Roman Emperor Hadrian who came up with the peace through strength. And this was often thought to be Ronald Reagan's through line, wasn't it? So just what's happening is people are just inventing reality in front of our eyes. And unless we push back, I mean, Fox is never going to push back on this because there's a dereliction of duty going on there at Fox. But there needs to be a pushback. And the problem is when there is pushback, Trump just goes nuts at the press for doing so in a truly childish manner. You know, he will just take aim at you and excoriate you in public. And that brings this general sense of the press being the enemy of the people to his supporters and then really to the GOP. And then suddenly, you know, your critical press is no more. You know, this is part of how you get rid of criticism against you until everyone around you is just completely obsequious. And it's worth noting, as I've said many times, that Stephen Miller is in charge. He's the real president.
When you watch what played out in Orange County, how can you not be sickened by that? Alejandro said.
So this is talking about what's going on with ICE, but you've got to remember that Stephen Miller is aligned to Smotrich and Ben Gvir in terms of Jewish, you know, really far to the right. So I know this isn't foreign policy, this is domestic policy, but the prevalence of Stephen Miller in the middle of everything should not be overstated. Or understated, whichever way.
And the tactic is deliberately to terrorize, to scare people. That's the whole stated goal. It's deterrence. This is U.S. immigration policy 101 supersized. It's what family separation was. Stephen Miller didn't want to just take 5,500 children away from their parents. He wanted to do tens of thousands of them. And now every day in L.A., as you and I have talked about for months since Donald Trump was elected again, mass deportation is family separation, just by another name.
So on and so forth. And, you know, Gavin Newsom here saying Stephen Miller is in charge. Trump's inability to control him is going to harm our communities and our country for years to come. And I think you can see an influence of Stephen Miller in what has taken place also in foreign policy, in the foreign policy domain. But you've got a situation now where Trump feels that he has been publicly slighted by Israel, and that is not going to land well. So I wonder how that is going to affect his relationship with those in a pro-Israel camp around him, who have been heavily influencing him recently. Here we've got Kayleigh McEnany, who was the former White House press secretary, wasn't she, in Trump 1.0?
So rather than World War III, we may get more peace. And rather than 34 felony counts, President Trump may end up with 34 Nobel Peace Prizes. That was for the leftists. You can clip this and make it go viral and go nuts. So rather than World War...
But the fact is that you might be saying that sort of tongue-in-cheek. You're not really. 34 felony counts. He could end up with 34 Nobel Peace Prizes. Well, not anymore. Now that he called for peace and it never really happened. And actually, I think it would be an absolute disgrace if that man was even remotely considered for a Nobel Peace Prize. He should be considered for Global Narcissism Prize, but nothing else. Now, Representative Eric Swalwell, who is a Democrat, just stated that Iran moved its nuclear materials weeks ago after Trump was telegraphing his attack on Twitter. So we're going to go back now, and for that you can say Truth Social, really. We're going to go full circle, really, and talk about how this is diplomacy by Truth Social. there are claims, and Swalwell's not the only one that's saying this, is that I reported this yesterday, that Israel had been, the US military had to do diversions in the skies with regard to their B-2 bombers, send some to Guam, do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that, to have these diversions. Apparently because they were worried that Trump had been saying too much on social media with regard to what the intentions were of the US. Then you've got Swalwell here saying Iran moved its nuclear materials weeks ago because Trump telegraphed what was going to happen on Twitter, on Truth Social. You have an issue here whereby the President of the United States of America is doing diplomacy by social media, diplomacy by Truth Social. And this is also harming, by this I mean the US strikes on Iran, are harming the US in other ways. Here we now hear that both Japan and South Korea are not turning up to the NATO summit in The Hague as these kind of observer nations or nations that are invited to sit on the sidelines, and because they're really important players for global security in the Indo-Pacific region. NATO is obviously the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, designed to engender security across its member states in terms of Article 5 and defense against Russia. But North Korea and Japan had to pull out, or decided to pull out, due to these strikes on Iran. Japan Times reports Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba has cancelled his trip to the NATO Leaders Summit this week, a day before his scheduled departure from Tokyo, following US military strikes on Iranian nuclear sites on Saturday. Then we hear that Lee Jae-myung is not going to participate in the NATO summit in The Hague in 2025. Presidential office sources say the original plan was to participate, but the US airstrike on Iran flipped the decision. So as Arnaud Bertrand says, there's no overstating how extraordinary this is. The West has now lost its political support from the whole of Asia, even Japan and South Korea. What the US has done in terms of trade wars with places like Vietnam is throw Vietnam back into the Chinese fold. Striking Iran in the way it has now peed off Japan and South Korea. Just an incredible suite of missteps since January the 20th the United States have made. It's cozied up to Russia. It's essentially killed people in Ukraine with its foreign policy. It's pissed off all its allies in Europe. It's started a trade war with everyone, but particularly with its allies. Yes, it was always going to put heavy tariffs on China, but actually it was taking a really big swing at places like Europe and Canada and Mexico. These are allies, and yet Russia gets away scot-free. So he spends his time cozying up to Russia. Ukraine gets screwed. Europe gets peed off. As mentioned, Canada and Mexico are in the crosshairs. Then there's a big sort of trade war with China, which was to be somewhat expected, right? But then that's going to be inflationary, and I don't know. And then he just backs down when there's any strength shown to him, but it doesn't back down when he's bullying weaker people and weaker countries. This is just an absolute PR, geopolitical, foreign policy disaster, the Trump administration. It just is. And there are the occasional people that stand up to him, but not nearly enough. The Democrats, I think, are being pretty ineffective at the moment. And then you have your man, Thomas Massie from the Republican Party, who is essentially the only guy that appears to be standing up to Trump. But anyway, just to go back to what I was saying about presidency by Truth Social, foreign diplomacy, military action by Truth Social. Here we had Tommy Vitor saying military officials says that the Pentagon's social media addiction put the service members conducting the Iran operation at risk. Quote, but even as the military planning was being conducted in secrecy, each of Mr. Trump's social media posts seemed to be telling the world what was coming. The president said one military official was the, quote, biggest threat to OPSEC, or operational security, that the planning faced. So just thought I'd throw that one in there. Anyway, Thomas Massie, he is a MAGA Republican through and through, but he is putting his ideology above his cultish adulation of their leader. Not that he has that cultish adulation necessarily, but so many of these other MAGA Republicans do. Massie came out and said there was no imminent threat. And he joined Ro Khanna, who's a Democrat, in decrying the Iran strike. Quote, I'm always open to new intelligence, but the procedure should have been Congress be briefed before we decided to enter war and actually have a vote on it. That's what Ro Khanna said, and that's what Thomas Massie kind of agrees with. You know, there was no congressional permission granted. There was no attempt to take the decision through Congress. So Thomas Massie fails the MAGA loyalty test and becomes the first to attract the ire of the dear leader, says Elliot Higgins. And what's he saying? Well, what's he referring to? This. So another Truth Social excoriation, this time of one of his own. So Donald Trump the other day, this was, I forget exactly when, June the 22nd, so this was 2 days ago. Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky is not MAGA, even though he likes to say he is. Actually, MAGA doesn't want him, doesn't know him, doesn't respect him. He's a negative force who almost always votes no matter how good something may be. He's a simple-minded grandstander who thinks it's good politics for Iran to have the highest level nuclear weapon while at the same time yelling death to America at every chance they get. Iran has killed and maimed thousands of Americans and even took over the American embassy in Tehran under the Carter administration. We had a spectacular military success yesterday, taking the bomb right out of their hands, and they would use it if they could. But as usual, and despite all the praise and accolades received, the lightweight congressman is against what was so brilliantly achieved last night in Iran. Massie is weak, ineffective, and votes no on virtually everything put before him, Rand Paul Jr. No matter how good something may be, he is disrespectful to our great military and all that they stand for, not even acknowledging their brilliance and bravery in yesterday's attack, which was total and complete win. Massie should drop his fake act and start putting America first, but he doesn't know how to get there. He doesn't have a clue. He'll undoubtedly vote against a great big beautiful bill, even though non-passage means a 68% tax increase for everybody and many things far worse than that. MAGA should drop this pathetic loser, all caps, Tom Massie, like the plague. The good news is that we will have a wonderful American patriot running against him in a Republican primary. So this is a reference to them, putting someone against Tom Massie to run against him, who's going to be some true MAGA, not this fake MAGA who wants to put, America first rather than Trump first. So there'll be a wonderful American patriot running against him in the Republican primary, and I'll be out in Kentucky campaigning really hard. MAGA is not about lazy, grandstanding, non-productive politicians, of which Thomas Massie is definitely one. Thank you to our incredible military and the amazing job they did last night. It was really special. Make America great again. Now, I just ask you, would Obama have written something as puerile as this? I mean, it's just really pathetic, I have to say. It is pathetic. But that appears to be the way it's done now. Donald Trump declared so much war on me today, it should require an act of Congress, was a beautifully pithy response there from Thomas Massie. And as I played to you before, Thomas Massie came out, and this is kind of relevant for earlier. My point earlier is that the lobbying is huge in the Republican Party, but nothing is as important as Trump's own ego. And if his ego gets dented, it doesn't matter how much lobbying takes place. He will attack whoever dented his ego.
What he promised us was we would put America first. And I think there are still voices in this administration. You've still got JD Vance. You've still got Tulsi Gabbard. You still, RFK Jr. You still got calmer heads that could prevail.
They were not persuasive in this case, clearly.
Well, somebody was persuasive. AIPAC is very persuasive. For instance, the Israeli lobby in Congress, if you look at my colleagues' feeds now, they all look the same. They're all tweeting the same message, that we've got to support Israel and we've got to do this.
Absolutely true. So the politicians were retweeting the same claims effectively because AIPAC were lobbying them to do so. Glenn Greenwald here says AIPAC tried to remove Thomas Massie from Congress last year for questioning US financing of Israel. In a giant coincidence, Trump just announced a pact to remove Thomas Massie from Congress. GOP warmongers Lindsey, Tom Cotton, Toon, Ted Cruz, Randy Fine, Dan Crenshaw, all welcome. So there's a bit of a war going on, as you can see here. Yes, to which, and I'm not going to play this, but it's a fascinating 6-minute interview here of Thomas Massie by Manu Raju here on CNN. Massie said basically he predicted that Republicans would lose the majorities due to Trump's reckless governing in the November midterm elections next year. So, you know, it is not looking good for the Republicans at the moment, although it's a long time till November. One has to say, and the Democrats do seem to have neglected to show up at the moment. And then you had people online who have been, like Massie was stating with regard to AIPAC, lobbying Republican lawmakers to say the same thing. You've had influencers saying the same thing, as I reported yesterday. You know, you can see all that these statements here that these different people like Gunter Eagleman and Barron Trump, Val, all these kind of right-wing influencers with their huge followings and whatnot, saying exactly the same things. If you're no longer MAGA because Trump wiped out Iran's nuclear sites, you were never MAGA to begin with, is variations of that. So there's definitely this push to see Trump supported, and a push to see Israel represented positively. But now Trump has gone against Israel. How will that sit with the kind of AIPAC lobbied Republicans? Like, how are they going to square the circle here with what Trump has said? And it's going to be really, really difficult. And I'll leave you with Trump just sounding off against the news again, because, you know, that's what you get in a free and fair, a country with the free and fair elections and a free press and freedom of speech. You know, that's what we're aiming for. Just all of those ideals, which unfortunately I think are questioned when Trump points them out the back of his rallies, and I think stimulates this real distaste for the media amongst his supporters, and I think it's dangerous. This rhetoric is dangerous.
I think it's been completely demolished. I think the reason we're here is because those pilots, those B-2 pilots, did an unbelievable job. And, you know, the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSDNC. They're all, and frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit. They're not after the pilots, they're after me. They want to try and demean.
And there you go. That's Trump in a nutshell. Anyway, that's enough from me. Take care, guys. Speak to you soon. Toodle pips.